Justin Jefferson to IR, which means big moves have to happen for the Minnesota Vikings. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about other trade targets in the NFL and our power rankings heading into week 6. It's the Locked On NFL podcast with Carter and James Rapien.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. It's Chris Carter. It's James Rapien of Locked On Steelers and Locked On Bengals. We're bringing to you the Locked On NFL podcast, which you can find on all your favorite podcasting platforms, especially on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel for all of our daily episodes from all the hosts throughout the week. Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, which provides you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat up to 50 or more infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Speaking of medical, James, huge news in the NFL. Justin Jefferson, arguably the best receiver in the NFL, down and is now on injured reserve with a knee injury with the Minnesota Vikings. This is huge news for a team that's already struggling. It's also huge news for fantasy owners out there. But James, if the Vikings have any hope of climbing back, I thought Justin Jefferson was going to have to be a huge part of it. Does this in your eyes doom their season or doom their chances of getting back anytime soon in an NFC North that's being dominated by the Lions?
It ruins any chance because he is their best player. He's arguably the best non-quarterback in the NFL. And so to lose a guy like Justin Jefferson in an offense that has been operating at a pretty high level. I think they've been putting up points and yards. You look at what Justin Jefferson's done this year. And so, yeah, the Vikings, this is a worst case scenario where from this season perspective, and we could talk about big picture in just a second, but you have a guy in Justin Jefferson who's been so durable. We know the numbers. I mean, 1,800 yards last season, the year before 1,600, 1,400 as a rookie. He's gotten better and better each year. And this year was on pace to keep that up and had back-to-back 149 yard. I was going to say 150. He was a yard short of having 150 plus yards in each of their first 3 games this year. So he clearly is still a game changer. And so you lose him to a hamstring injury and he's going to miss 4 games at least. And you're 1-4. It's not like they're 4-1. If they're 4-1, right, it's fine. You're 1-4. And so I think the conversation really changes. They're certainly not going to rush him back unless for some reason they go on a run without him. Let me ask you that part of it. Do you think that this team flawed on defense? I like what their passing game. I don't love their rushing offense. Do you think they're capable of going on a run over the next 4 weeks, at least without Justin Jefferson?
I think they have a chance next week. They're at Chicago. The Bears are usually a doormat. They weren't this past week. They did their job against the Commanders. But I feel like this Bears game is a must win. Then they got the Niners at home. They don't have to worry about that one. That's just over right now. But then you got the Packers and the Falcons. So 3 out of your next 4 opponents, to me, are teams that don't scare me. They're teams that if I'm coming in and I'm playing my best football, I should be able to stand up against. The Vikings have a lot of problems, but that's the other thing. I felt that about the Buccaneers and the Chargers when they played those teams, and they lost those games by single possessions, kind of biting back against their tendency to win those single possession games last year. They were within it. They had a chance against the Chiefs and fell short last week. They have to turn it on soon. I think that they can survive this next month or so without Justin Jefferson. If it is just 4 weeks, they'll need him against the Saints. That defense is for real, and I think that's going to be a big case. But that means they're going to have to win 3 road games. Again, we're just factoring out the home game against the 49ers. But if they win 3 road games, at the Bears, at the Packers, at the Falcons, that keeps them alive. But if they fall. If they only win 1 in that next stretch of 4 games, then you're looking at 2-7 midway through the season. You're toast, and then it's going to bring the question. Everyone's going to be asking, do you even bring Justin Jefferson back at that point? Because you're out of the race. I do like guys like Jordan Addison. I do like T.J. Hawkinson. I do like guys they have on their offense, but they've just been an inconsistent team. So that's why I asked the question. They gotta step up right now, or this season is gone.
Yeah, I agree. They're rock hard place Vikings. And just looking at it, I agree with you. It's not an overwhelming schedule by any stretch. You have between now and December,
Yes.
you have the Bears twice, you have the
Mhm.
Saints, the Packers, the Falcons, the Broncos. A lot of winnable games in there, especially if you have Justin Jefferson. I think the thing that's holding me back from saying that they're going to be able to stay afloat, we've never really seen this offense without Justin Jefferson. We know how
Very
big of a game
true.
changer he is. And that changes. It changes how you operate. It's going to change how Jordan Addison is played. It's going to change how much they're relying on a guy like KJ Osborne, including TJ Hawkinson. And so I don't know if they're built to withstand this, even against competition where you would look at it. And with Justin, you could certainly see 3-1 over the next 4.
Mhm.
I don't know if you can get that now. So that's led people to say, oh, the Vikings should tank for Caleb Williams and sell pieces. There's some saying, and we'll get into trades, maybe you move Kirk Cousins now or try to. I don't think the Vikings will do that. I think they'll look at the schedule and say, hey, let's see if we can at least go 2-2, maybe 3-1 without Justin and get him back in just over a month.
That's where I'm at too. I'm personally also never a believer in tanking, because when you tank, the players that are on your team that do, or the players that you want to sign that are on your team who you can keep for longer, then they start to look around like, man, this team doesn't want to win right now. I'm not trying to be here for this. That's how you lose guys. And I think that's something that when you look around the league, often the teams that do tank, there are times when it works out for you. There are times that you land in a good situation. The Bengals are a prime example of it. Their struggles got them Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and they did a few other things, and that's allowed them to spring back. But there are so many organizations that tanked for years and lost for years, got top 10 pick after top 10 pick, and it didn't yield the results they were thinking of. I think the Vikings should do everything they can to not tank this situation right now, but we'll see how this progresses. You mentioned trade targets and trade potentials. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, should the Vikings trade for a wide receiver? We got to look around the NFL and ask, who all can be traded for, who all might be traded for, because there's a lot of targets out there. James, I want to get your thoughts, and I'll add my thoughts to who those targets are in a minute here on the Locked On NFL podcast. Stick with us. We got a lot more to talk about in this show.
Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're preparing for a daily draft, scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit your roster. Let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. And Baker Mayfield, to the surprise of many, has been a borderline QB1 in fantasy while enjoying his most efficient season as a real-life NFL quarterback. Coming from the Buccaneers Week 5 bye, he should need to pass for a high volume this week in a matchup with Jared Goff and the red-hot Detroit Lions. It's a home matchup in Tampa Bay in Week 6, and Mayfield has been locked into a variety of receivers, and the Lions can struggle to cover slot targets like Chris Godwin and also tight ends like Cade Otton. The Bucs won't be able to run much on the Lions' defensive front, so Baker Mayfield should put up big numbers this week. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. The same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts, that's million with an M, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. From brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. eBay is the perfect place to go if you're looking for something as simple as headlight bulbs, which is something you can DIY yourself in your driveway. You need to get to eBay Motors today. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, Chris, let's dive into some potential trade targets. The NFL trade deadline is on Halloween, so it's quickly approaching and 20 days away if you're listening to it on a Wednesday. If you're listening to us on a Wednesday, I think the first one is going to be Kirk Cousins. Let's say the Minnesota Vikings struggle some. What if the Jets win in spite of Zach Wilson? I think Kirk Cousins will be mentioned. He will be one of the many mentioned ahead of the trade deadline. Even if it won't happen, he's in a contract year, and if the Vikings aren't winning games, why not get something for him?
What level of perpetuity, what crazy place are we in that Kirk Cousins could end up on the same roster as Aaron Rodgers? Like that would be the wildest thing that has ever happened.
Or what if there's an injury, and I hope there isn't, but what if I just think that he's the one like veteran established quarterback that I think could be available. There's a path for him to be available in a few weeks.
I agree. And to your point, if the Vikings, let's say like the NFL deadline is on Halloween, October 31st. Let's say that they lose these next 4 games and they're looking at it like the deadline's here and they're like, this ain't it, boys. Like, they're 1-7, 1-8, whatever they are. And they say, you know what? Let's just, this season's lost. Let's send Kirk somewhere where we can get a return for it for someone that's a competitor and needs a quarterback. The Jets would be a fit there, and see if you can get a first round pick that you can then flip with yours to get an even better pick up there. Or if the Vikings do end up being that bad, and they naturally get that high pick, you can then double up to get Caleb Williams along with another star to help you for the future. So I'd say that's a potential there. But one team that I think is in a very similar position as the Vikings as far as, being sellers, and has already kind of even indicated that they're going to have they might have a fire sale on their hands, is the Denver Broncos. They're 1-4 in the AFC West. They're in an even tougher position because you got the Chiefs, the Chargers are at 2-2, and even the Raiders pulled out a decent win on Monday Night Football. I think the Broncos, as bad as they've looked, they gave up the 70 points to the Dolphins. They've been pretty rough this season. Their one win was over the Bears in that crazy comeback game. They could be a team that's looking to sell players. I want you to get your thoughts on these two. One is a player that I could see traded from them simply because of contract reasons, and just he's not as amazing as this other guy I'm going to mention. First one I'm going to say is Cortland Sutton. And that's a receiver. You can move around. He's got size. He's got the skills. What would you say to teams looking into him as a trade target? And where's a place you think that he could possibly land?
I certainly think he could be on the table, and there could be multiple teams interested in him. I mean, heck, we saw Van Jefferson get traded on Tuesday to the Falcons. And so deals like that happen all the time. And this would be, I think, a little bit bigger of a deal than that one, but not much, right? I mean, a 5th rounder, 6th rounder, who could I see? To me, I wonder, and I'm going to default here. And even though I think they're arguably the worst team in the league, Carolina Panthers, every receiver should be tied to them because they need weapons. Like they need to give Bryce Young something to survive. Like that's just the reality of their situation. And so Cortland Sutton, he would give them a big body. I think on the flip side, I know I mentioned the Jets for Kirk Cousins. They could use a receiver.
They could.
And I know for whatever reason, Mecole Hardman didn't work there. He's on the block as well, it sounds like. But to me, that's the one where it's like, all right, well, the Jets, if they hang around, they could be in it. Could the Vikings go after Cortland Sutton? Maybe. So there are options. I think there are teams. I don't think it will be a ton, but there will be certain teams that are interested in Cortland Sutton. The other one, are you thinking about Jerry Jeudy? Is that who you're thinking?
I wasn't. I'm going think bigger. Think bigger. Oh. You know who I'm talking about now.
Oh, who you talking about?
Patrick Surtain.
Oh.
Imagine if he was on the trade block. The auctioning that they could get for that guy at cornerback. I'm not so sure the Broncos would want to do that because he's like the biggest legitimate piece for the future that you could have and say, hey, we have a cornerback for the future. But if you really are fire sailing and you want to build this from the ground back up and say, hey, Patrick's going to be great, but we need a lot of other building blocks. We need a young quarterback, a new offensive line, all these other things. Surtain is the guy, the one guy on that roster that would get people showing up. Be like, you know what? Just take our picks. We want that guy.
Yeah. I think the team you cover, the Pittsburgh Steelers, would give up.
Absolutely.
I think it would be Minka-esque, where they're like, oh, all right. Yeah, we could take that former Crimson Tide. Yeah, come on over.
Come on over. Absolutely. We're talking about it here in Pittsburgh right now. That's why I brought him up.
I think there would be plenty of teams willing to offer a first and then some. And so if you're Denver and you're probably going to have a new GM, I'll break the news. Probably going to have a new GM.
I'll break the news.
You might want to go that route. And so really talented player, but I could totally see that being the case where there are a bunch of teams in. I think the team I cover should be in just because it's such a talent. You know, the Bengals, why wouldn't they be interested? Why wouldn't the Jaguars be interested, or the Kansas City Chiefs, or and I could list every single team, because every team can use a corner like that. Every team.
Right. Exactly. That's why I brought him up, because Surtain is so good at his job. You know, maybe a team like the Dolphins that, you know, their cornerback situation, granted Ramsey's hurt right now, but they've invested a lot into that, those type of teams. But, you know, the Bills, they're a team without Tre'Davious White. You know, if this is your time to sell to sell out, to get to win with this core right now, that's another team that'll be in the market. That's why I put in Patrick Surtain. Give me a couple others on your potential trade block guys that could be out there that the NFL needs to be watching for.
Well, you got to look at the two running backs that have been franchise tagged and their teams. The Raiders won earlier this week. We'll see that they could beat the Pats and look up and be 3-3. But Josh Jacobs, why wouldn't he be on the block? And then another one, and I think it's interesting, Saquon Barkley. If the Giants aren't going anywhere, and they're probably not going anywhere, why not get something for him? And I think you could, if you're the Giants, say, hey, he's on a much more reasonable contract than Christian McCaffrey. We know he's a game changer. He's had the injury risk that Christian McCaffrey had, and try to get a 2 and a 3 and a 4 for Saquon Barkley, which is much more than you're going to get if you lose him in free agency and get a compensatory pick the following year. So
right.
Barkley is one I would have my eye on. And I think a lot of teams would at least kick the tires because it's only a 1-year deal. So why not?
Listen, you don't have to sell me hard on Saquon Barkley. I saw that dude in college at Penn State. I seen him at the Giants. You know, I said from the jump, when they paid Daniel Jones, I was like, that is a mistake. Not that you should always pay your running backs, but I'm like, Saquon Barkley's the engine that makes that offense go, and Daniel Jones is a nice accessory after the fact. If he was on the trade block, I would think that there'd be quite a few teams that would be like, hey, wait a second, you know, we're not going to spend top dollar, but similar to Christian McCaffrey's trade, you know, a couple mid-rounders, day 2 picks, they'd be considering that if he could complete their roster. I certainly look at that. My last one here that I'm gonna put out to you, and this is also from a team that could be in fire sale position. I think they even, you know, would admit that they are if someone made the right call. What about safety Budda Baker? Because he's a playmaker, he's a top tier guy, but the Cardinals, they know this ain't their year. And I know Josh Dobbs, my guy, my dude, he's a former Steeler, one of the nicest guys I've ever covered. He's doing a heck of a job, and that team is going to be picking in the top 5. You know, it's just a reality. If you're the Cardinals, similar to what we're talking about for Surtain, and even more so because Budda Baker, he's a vet now. Like, he's off of his rookie deal, he's getting paid big dollars. Somebody is going to want to complete their roster and need a safety, and Budda Baker's a guy that I could see a lot of people saying, "Hey, wait a second, how much for that guy over there?"
Yeah, I get it. I totally do. Established player could give a big boost to the defense. I'll give you one more in Arizona. In fact, 2 more, just since we're talking about Arizona. Hollywood Brown, speedster, plug and play, could go in a bunch of offenses and just be a help. I don't think he's necessarily a 1 in this league, but he's a really darn good 2. And if he's your 3, your receiving core is as good as anybody's. So
Vikings.
Yeah. The Vikings. Yeah. I mean, that's a good option. Like, let's say they win a game or 2, because then they could say, we're going to roll out Hollywood Brown, Justin Jefferson, and Jordan Addison.
Woo! Red alarm.
And so you're right. They could go the other way. I mentioned trading Kirk. They could go the other way and say, nope, we're going to hold the fort down. And then, man, when Justin Jefferson comes back, we're ready to roll. And then last one, James Conner. Year left. I know he's dealing with a knee right now.
Yeah.
He could end up on injured reserve. Playing really well there. Maybe they keep him. But if they could get something for him, I'm Pro Bowl running back available. So, and I think of the 3 running backs, 1 would be traded of the 3, but I think all 3 are worth mentioning.
Absolutely. I'm right with you there. Those are the running back position is so tricky when it comes to value in the NFL. We talk all the time, but the trade market, especially when you're trying to win and you want that last piece. And the Niners with McCaffrey, their situation was set up. They had their offensive line, their defense. They just needed a young quarterback to just hold it down the way Brock Purdy has, and now he's growing in it. And you added McCaffrey. That's the ideal situation. Teams that are kind of similar in a similar build. I think the Bills are a team that could use a playmaker running back to really complete some things. There's a lot of teams out there. I think that if they added that piece, they'd be in a much better position.
What if the Chiefs say we want Saquon Barkley?
Ooh, don't bring that evil upon us, James. Why are you doing that to us? We cover AFC teams.
Everyone's talking about receiver, and they say, hey, we're about to go get the running back. And him and Pacheco are a two-headed monster out of the backfield. Let's see where the Chiefs rank in our Week 6 power rankings. We will do that coming up next.
But first, this episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. The Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use that you can have right at home. All it takes to get a Jase case is to fill out a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of their board-certified physicians. You'll get ongoing care from their physicians on any treatment-related questions, doctor created and doctor recommended. Don't be caught unprepared. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. Jase handles everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Jase Medical is simple. You go online, fill out a form, and then you get prescription life-saving medications right to your door. The Jase case gives you peace of mind so that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. You have it right there. Jase Medical makes sure you have that medication in hand. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. We're back here on the Locked On NFL podcast, the Wednesday edition with Chris Carter and James Rapien. James, it's time to talk about the power rankings. Now, we don't have a fancy imagery right now, but we do have the full rankings of all the votes that have been had here. And let's start from the bottom and work our way up this week. We'll save who's going to be number one for last, even though y'all should know who's number one. But let's start with the bottom group here. At the bottom, Carolina Panthers at 32, Broncos at 31, Giants at 30, Patriots at 29, Bears at 28. I don't got too many complaints here. The Giants have dropped themselves in this conversation. I'd say they are the team of that group that should be the most disappointed to be there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You know, the Giants coming off of what they did last season, it's a disappointment. The Patriots are right there, I think, disappointment-wise. I would put Denver 32.
The way they're playing, I agree.
Embarrassing. I look, I knew Carolina was lacking talent.
Right.
At spots. Like Denver, Denver, you should be in the cellar right now for your performance. Arizona moves up 1 to 27. I think they were ranked too low last week. That could be about right now that you look at it. The Vikings 26th, the Commanders 25th, down 3 spots. The Raiders moving up 3 spots to 24. The Jets move up a spot with a win to 23. And to round out the top 20, it's the Titans at 22, Texans at 21, and the Packers falling from 15 to 20.
Yeah, the Packers, I think they were, a lot of us, I thought, were looking at, man, Jordan Love, the way he came back against the Saints. There's some belief there. But, man, the way they played against the Raiders, that was rough. And right now, the Packers, there's a lot of alarms going off because that's a franchise that I think was expecting to kind of make another one of those transitions. Let's face it, James, for you and our lives together, we have seen Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Those have been the quarterbacks for the Green Bay Packers. And now it's Jordan Love. And listen, Jordan may turn into a fine quarterback later in his career, but right now he is clearly struggling along with this team that I totally get them being at 20. Is there a team in the 20s here that you think will end up well above where they are right now?
I think Houston's pretty good. The Titans, they're flawed, but pretty solid. Those are the 2 teams that stand out the most. The Vikings would have been sneaky if Justin Jefferson wasn't hurt, but kind of tanks them. Are we sure that Jordan Love is a worse quarterback than the quarterback of the 19th ranked team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, followed by the Colts?
You watch your mouth
Falcons,
about Kenny Pickett, sir.
and Browns. I'm serious.
I know.
Are we sure? I
We're
know he's
not
a winner.
sure. Yeah.
I know he's a winner in everything, but
I mean, look, I got to cover
debate.
the guy. I think it's a good debate.
I think it's a real debate. Now, in 2 years, it might not be a debate, but right now, I don't know about Kenny Pickett. I do know it was a heck of a throw to George Pickens, and my fantasy team benefited from that, and I will take that all day long. You keep throwing to 14, Kenny. Keep throwing to 14.
We all like that. I have George Pickens in a couple leagues as well. No, but that's a legitimate question right now. And my biggest thing, listen, I get it from Steelers fans a lot right now when they're like, "How dare you say bad things about Kenny?" I'm like, listen, he's missing. He's not doing well right now. But like you said, he's a winner. He has now 5 game-winning drives and 4 fourth-quarter comebacks in 17 starts. He keeps coming up. But as Tom Brady once said, you don't want to have as many comebacks and fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives, because that means you're not doing your job in the first 3 quarters in the first place. That's where Kenny Pickett has to improve. So that's a legitimate question. Steelers at 19, Packers at 20, Colts at 18, up 3 there. Man, putting the Colts above the Steelers, that's a little harsh for a team that's down to their backup quarterback. The Falcons up to 17 after their win over the Texans. The Browns at 16, moving down 2 spots during their bye week, along with the Rams at 15, who moved down 2 spots here. And then we find the Bengals at 14. They kind of did the reverse of the Packers. The Packers dropped down 5 spots. The Bengals went up 5 spots. They're ranked at 14, right behind the Saints at 13. James, are the Bengals back? They put up the big numbers. Jamar Chase, he's always open, was always open in this last one. Granted, it was the Cardinals, but this was the offensive output I think a lot of people have been waiting to see.
Yeah, they were at least back for 1 week. They need to show it again this week in Seattle. I think I had them a little bit lower than 14th, and it's just because there's a lot of questions still. That said, I get it, and I get them being 14th, and if they go out there and play well against Seattle this week and get another win, I could totally see people buying into this team and them a week from now pushing for a top 10 spot. But we'll see. I think there's a lot of questions there. There's a lot of questions with a lot of these teams, and you said the Saints at 13, Tampa at 12, the Chargers at 11. Plenty of questions there. The Ravens lose ugly, like we talked about on the other side. Yeah, I know. Again, you're right. I mean, both losses were really, really ugly. Yes. Gardner Minshew and Kenny Pickett. Who's better? Don't answer that. 9, Seattle. The Seattle Seahawks are 9th, Jags 8th, Cowboys 7th, Lions 6th, Bills 5th, and I'm just going to finish us off. The Miami Dolphins move up to 4, the Chiefs move up a spot to 3, the Eagles 2, and the number 1 team is Brock Purdy, certainly better than Kenny Pickett. All right, I'm going to stop now. And the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, he has a ton around him. But I also think Brock Purdy is a legitimate starting quarterback.
He's efficient as all get out. Like, there's no doubt about it right now. I think that's another conversation to be had. Where does Brock Purdy rank among NFL quarterbacks? Because as far as efficiency, and you could say, look, if we pulled him out of that offense, but you know what? People tried to say that about Tom Brady for years until it was too late. And then he was Tom Brady, the GOAT, the legend, all the things we call him. And I give all the credit to Brock Purdy. He is so smart with where he puts the football. And yes, Shanahan's system lends itself to that. But right now, he's looking better than Jimmy Garoppolo or Sam Darnold, or name a quarterback that's been in Kyle Shanahan's system. And I'll take the way Brock Purdy is playing right now over most of those guys. Him and the Niners deserve their number 1 spot. Who are the Cowboys? Because they're at 7 now. Mm-hmm. After getting slapped, they got beat by the Niners worse than the Steelers got beat by the Niners, and that's saying something because the Steelers got beat by the Niners. Yeah, where are the Cowboys really? We're putting it 7 for now, but you look at their wins; they're not exactly against dynamite teams or teams in the top 10 like the Steelers. They have a win over number 10 Ravens and number 16 Browns, and they're down at 19. But the Cowboys, they're a team that had to barely come back against, I think they barely came back. No, they lost to the Cardinals. Excuse me. That was the Giants that came back against them. Where are the Cowboys in your mind in the NFL?
I think they should be lower.
I'm right with you.
I do. 7th is too high. It doesn't feel like to me, if they don't get off to a great start, that defense isn't nearly as imposing. And I don't know exactly what it is. And I'm not trying to rip Micah Parsons, but that entire defense, it's if they don't force a turnover early or have a block kick or something like that, then they're not as dominant. and they needed to show up against the 49ers. They didn't. And then obviously on offense, it starts with the quarterback. Talk about quarterbacks, Dak Prescott. I think Dak Prescott's overrated, and we'll see with him, but he's going to have to show me something. Like, I think he's in that Kirk Cousins class, and it's just one's with the Vikings and one's with the Cowboys. And that's where the reputations kind of vary and change. So it's a bummer. I think they're a bit high, but we'll see. We'll see if they, it's a bummer the way they lost. I was excited for that game. Got done covering my game in Arizona, went out to try to catch the second half, was excited to watch that game. And there was no game to watch because it was a blowout.
I was right with you, man. I had just finished all my shows. I had done everything. I was like, all right, let me get my slice of pizza here and watch this. Oh my goodness, what is this football game? That is that is exactly
at least you had pizza
where I was.
Because
at least I had football. Absolutely. Let us know what you thought of our Locked On Podcast Network power rankings that we had here with all the different rankings that were placed here. Were we too high or too low on your team? Let us know in the comments here on YouTube, as well as tweeting at us at James Rapien or at Carter Critiques for us. For James and for Chris, thank you so much here on the Locked On NFL podcast. Check us out. We'll be back next week, but we got episodes all week long. Stick with us right here on the Locked On NFL podcast.